We are approaching the end of an era far more swiftly than any of us supposed, and I don't think this can really be debated by much of anybody at this point. The ISS is entirely too dependent on Russian collaboration, and it's going to take a very long time to change that situation. And in the meantime, given Dmitry Rogozin's repeated rhetorical and frankly frenzied and insane tweets that he's been sending out as of late, I frankly wouldn't put it past the Russians, or at least Putin. I can't really apply this blame to the entire people or cosmonauts or anybody else, but I wouldn't put it past Rogozin and Putin to order cosmonauts to sabotage operations on the ISS. Yes, that may not seem very likely right now, but as these sanctions continue to bite on the Russian Federation and the Russian people, sanctions that are far more serious than any economic action that was taken against the Soviet Union during their entire history, direct retaliation against the ISS is not only likely, I think that it would be one of the less radical things that the Russians might do. As things become increasingly desperate for Putin, as he becomes painted more and more into a corner, I think that he becomes more and more likely to undertake some sort of military action in order to disrupt the unity of the countries that are currently united against him. Because it's one thing to ask your people to deal with some economic inconveniences and insecurities, and quite another to ask them to deal with the possibility of either being dead or wish that they were dead in the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust. This is becoming increasingly disturbing to me with each passing day. However, I don't want to talk any more about that. Instead, I simply want to talk about the increasing possibility that the ISS is no longer going to be a viable platform for our operations in LEO. And in the meantime, the Chinese are steadily building up their LEO capabilities with no interruption or disruption whatsoever. And this is something that we need to take very seriously. And fortunately, NASA is. And we have not one, but two ambitious space station projects in the works at the moment that hopefully will come into reality within the next 5 years. And we're going to discuss this in just a moment. I'm going to be covering these two new stations in great detail, and that cannot be done in a single video. So the first of these videos is going to concern the Orbital Reef station being constructed by Sierra Space and Blue Origin. And although I have talked about this station a number of times, I recently attended a webinar which ran for nearly 2 hours and covered a tremendous amount of detail about this station. Not only is it ambitious, it involves a great deal of international participation, which is one of the reasons why I'm calling it an international space station. This is a station that not only will be able to replace ISS in terms of volume, in terms of crew capacity, in terms of capabilities, but actually eclipse it. In my opinion, by the end of 2030, Orbital Reef will be substantially larger than ISS ever was, and carrying out a lot more work. Now, given Blue Origin's struggles as of late, many people may question whether or not this station can possibly be completed, especially within 5 years or so, but Sierra Space is the operating force behind this station, in my opinion. They have $3 billion in active contracts right now, and their services have supported more than 500 successful space missions, and I'm not exaggerating there. Sierra Space, or Sierra Nevada, as they continue to be called with their other operations, has supported a hell of a lot of work in LEO and beyond. And of course, it's not just Sierra Space that's contributing to this. Blue Origin has the enormous amount of capital necessary to complete this station, but on top of that, Sierra Space raised $1.4 billion in private capital from sources around the world to get this station started. That is actually a record for a space project being invested in by private companies. There is one other project that raised about the same amount of money, but that's about it. There's a lot of confidence behind this station, and there's a lot of reason to be confident about it. Let me explain this station in detail. Orbital Reef consists of 5 key components: the core module, research modules, the life module, the energy mast, and finally the node. So what does all of that mean? Well, the core module is the heart of the station. It's provided by Blue Origin and provides utilities and life support for the station. It's 7 meters in diameter in order to fit into Blue Origin's design for the New Glenn rocket. On top of that, the life module is something that I have spoken about many times. It provides the primary crew habitat and also space for science and manufacturing on top of other services. It is an enormous amount of space, 300 cubic meters, but the most important thing about it is the way the space is laid out: 27 meters long by 27 meters in diameter. That kind of space is something you simply don't get on the ISS. A huge amount of room to work in, a huge amount of room to live in, to operate in, something that other stations simply don't offer. And the external surface of the life module is resistant not only to radiation but also micrometeoroids and other types of small space debris impacts. Now, each one of the energy masts on this modular station is supplied by Blue Origin and supplies 100 kilowatts worth of energy for the station, which means each new energy mast you add obviously adds another 100 kilowatts, using cutting-edge solar technology far more advanced than what's currently being used on the ISS. On top of that, you also have the research module. Now, the research module is yet to be determined who's going to be constructing that. My money is on Sierra Space, and that is going to be a laboratory exclusively devoted to scientific and manufacturing work that can only be done in microgravity, such as 3D biological printing, materials research. It will have a quantum physics facility, also a rodent habitat for various types of biological experiments, a huge variety of services available on this science module for use by NASA, the ESA, the Japanese Space Agency, or anybody else that wants to lease the space. And then the last component is the node, the most simplistic part of the station, yet of course the most vital. It's an airlock for EVAs. It also has 2 docking ports for up to 2 visiting spacecraft, so the entire setup of the station to begin with by 2027 will have 1 science module, 1 core module, 1 life module, and 1 node, which will make it roughly 2/3 the size of the ISS. But as you can see in this diagram, up to 4 of these are going to be added by the mid-2030s, which means we'll be looking at something far bigger than the ISS, with far more crew capacity and a lot more work that can be done on board. This is an extremely ambitious project. Now, given how ambitious this project is, some people might be a little bit uncomfortable about how much it relies on Blue Origin, an organization that is yet to send anything into orbit. After all, the core and the mast are necessary for power generation, life support, heat radiators, and also consumable storage is in the core. High power computation is also going to be in the core, providing essentially an Amazon-like computation system for the station, allowing it to do a great deal of self-repair and self-maintenance, something that prevents ISS astronauts from getting a great deal of their scientific work done. If they can indeed accomplish this station will be far more efficient than the ISS. However, a lot of this depends on Blue Origin, but here's why I'm optimistic. First of all, Sierra Space's support is going to be instrumental. They simply cannot succeed without Sierra Space, period. But on top of that, they have a lot of international support, including the Japanese Space Agency. Now, it's important to note that Sierra Space has the Japanese H-3 rocket, which is being constructed in conjunction between the Japanese Space Agency and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, as a rocket capable of deploying the vast majority of components for the space station. It's capable of carrying up to 8 metric tons all the way out to geosynchronous transfer orbit, and can certainly deploy the Life module simply because it has a fairing diameter of 5.27 meters, which is large enough for anything on the station with the exception of the core module. And by the way, they have a backup plan just in case New Glenn goes belly up to create a core module capable of being deployed by a 5-meter fairing. What I find to be extremely important and extremely significant about the collaboration with the Japanese Space Agency, or JAXA, is the fact that this station is beginning to take shape as an international station. The H-3 bears a great deal of resemblance to the Vulcan Centaur. It's powered by 2 or possibly 3 main engines that run off of hydrogen and oxygen, and either 2 or 4 solid rocket boosters. And it can also, of course, use no solid rocket boosters if you wish. But the important thing about this rocket is its fairing size would allow it to carry the Dream Chaser. And on top of that, there are vehicles that the Japanese Space Agency is designing right now specifically for use for space station support and resupply, not only for space stations in LEO, but all the way out to cislunar space, namely for the Lunar Gateway. In many ways, what's going on right now is Orbital Reef is being set up as an intermediary point between Earth and the Moon in order for resupply, refueling, and other services to be offered by vehicles specifically designed for that purpose. The most notable of these vehicles is the HTVX, a vehicle specifically designed for resupply and long-term operations. It can carry a payload of up to 4 tons worth of pressurized volume and almost 2 tons worth of unpressurized volume on top of that, about 78 cubic meters worth of space. Now, that's not a tremendous amount compared to some other resupply ships out there, but its design endurance is what's really important. Not only can it survive for 6 months while it's docked to the space station, but it can also be sustained for up to 1.5 years after it departs the space station. What this means is the vehicle could resupply the Orbital Reef, refuel, get new supplies for the Lunar Gateway or other destinations, and continue to operate for 18 months, one mission after another, until it finally re-enters Earth's atmosphere. Granted, not a lot of reusability here, not a tremendous amount of payload capabilities, but still, the endurance of this thing and its capability of carrying out a large number of secondary missions after its initial resupply mission is very impressive indeed. And this is a ship designed to work specifically in conjunction with Orbital Reef as well as ISS. And another recommended launch vehicle for Orbital Reef is the Ariane 6. This also has a sufficiently large fairing in order to accommodate everything on the station, again with the exception of the core module, assuming they decide to stick with a 7-meter configuration. It can also carry the Dream Chaser. It can carry just about anything that needs to go up to the station. On top of that, it also has an unmanned transportation vehicle designed specifically to go to space stations and to be used for transition from LEO into cislunar space. And this is the CLTV vehicle that's being designed by Airbus. And by the way, this thing is also called the Moon Cruiser, and I just love this thing. On January 28th of 2021, this was awarded a CLTV, or Cislunar Transfer Vehicle Study. Airbus was awarded this, rather, for the execution of lunar missions, providing gateway logistics such as cargo for fuel or refueling in lunar orbit, and the gateway. On top of that, transfer of a large lunar module into low lunar orbit, and have versatility to support missions to post-ISS orbital infrastructure in low Earth orbit. For example, the Orbital Reef. And as a matter of fact, this particular vehicle has been singled out by Blue Origin and Sierra Space to provide support for Orbital Reef. And as you can see, it is fully integratable with the European Service Agency service module on the Orion spacecraft. This is a vehicle that's going to provide resupply not only to low Earth orbit, but also specifically to cislunar space. And once again, Orbital Reef can serve as a midpoint, a point where this vehicle can drop off supplies, pick up more supplies, and transfer them out to cislunar space, establishing an Earth-to-Moon logistical system unlike anything we've ever had before, and anything that's currently being planned by the Chinese. I mean, think about this scenario for the moment. You have the Dream Chaser, which is a reusable spacecraft bringing supplies up to Orbital Reef, and then you have the Moon Cruiser transferring those supplies out to cislunar space. It would require a lot less Delta V and a lot less fuel to get from Orbital Reef out to cislunar space, as opposed to doing the entire mission in a single launch. This would allow the Moon Cruiser to be used time and again, transferring supplies from Orbital Reef out to cislunar space, or even to lunar bases, almost indefinitely. Once again, a very impressive logistical system taking shape with a large number of international partners that exclude Russia and China. Once again, I wish those nations could be included, but they have made it very clear politically that that's not going to be happening anytime soon. Oh yes, and lest I forget, this station also intends to completely revolutionize the whole EVA experience with a single-person spacecraft. Instead of having to deal with clambering into a very bulky EVA suit that's difficult to work in, you're going to have your own self-contained life support system, your own propulsion system, and far easier robotic arms in order to manipulate the necessary equipment on the exterior of the station. The arms will actually be specifically designed to work in conjunction with everything on the station. This could make EVAs a much easier process and also substantially safer. Now, the basic version of this station that I showed to you, that includes the life module, the core module, scientific module, etc., all of this can be deployed with 3 launches. That's right, a mere 3 launches to get the station into operation. That's one of the reasons why Sierra Space is so optimistic about their abilities to get this station operational in 5 years. And now the sense of urgency in getting an effective and viable replacement for ISS has become a lot more serious. We need another station in low Earth orbit because, as I said before, as we ratchet up the pressure on Putin and the Russian Federation, they could disable the ISS anytime they want. And even though this would seem extremely self-destructive for Roscosmos, Roscosmos has just lost the vast majority of their customers anyway. They're already in a downward spiral. How much would they really lose if they disabled the ISS? It's a terrifying thought, but given the way Rogozin's been talking lately, it's a possibility that we need to take very seriously, especially considering that the Chinese could very easily offer Russia a space aboard their space station in order to continue their work in LEO without a whole lot of interruption. It would actually be a fairly smooth transition to start sending cosmonauts to the Chinese station instead of the ISS. How much does Roscosmos really need ISS? That's something I would really prefer not to gamble on. It's a tragic situation, a complete betrayal of everything that the ISS was founded on, but it's the cards that we've been dealt at the moment, and we need to respond to it as quickly as possible. In my next episode, you will see another station designed to accomplish the same things, also engaging international partners. In the meantime, if you want to support my content, please do so, because I will be taking a tour of Sierra's facilities very soon and could definitely use support in doing that. Have a look at the description or simply a like and subscribe, and I will be very, very grateful. So until we have a replacement for the ISS in orbit that doesn't rely on Roscosmos and their lunatic nut job leader, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.